Coming home is probably everything. I mean, you don't realize, but while you're gone, your wife had to live without you. So all the routines that you had, everything that you used to do, that's really different. So you got to figure out where's your place in the home.
And I had my nice little routine down, and some of that I felt was interrupted. And I thought, well, it's just easier for me to do it myself when he offered to help me sometimes. Some days I don't know how I made it through. I cried a lot. Looking back on it, it's all kind of a blur to me at this point.
That effect on the families, I think, is huge, and nobody thinks about that. Nobody talks about it. You know, when you come home, everybody's like, "How you doing? How's Brian?" It's all about the soldier, and I think, really, I think it's almost tougher on the spouses than on the soldier.
I went to the Family Reintegration Academy before Brian came home, and I went to Reconnecting with Your Spouse workshop. So it was nice to sit in this workshop with all these other spouses, which were mostly females, and listen to them talk about their feelings. And most of them talked about feelings of anxiety and worrying about this, just all kinds of different things they probably wouldn't tell their husbands. And it was really, it was good to sit in that workshop and feel like I wasn't alone in the way that I was feeling.
I look forward to the family time a lot more than I did before.
We just look forward to family time and getting away together, and look forward to possibly having another kid.
The biggest challenge I had coming home was finding my place back in the community. From a small town, you have a place in the order of the community. When you're gone for a year, that hole seems to be filled.
I could tell he wanted to have his own space and be by himself and think things over, and things were bothering him that happened over there that he could talk to me about. I know I wouldn't understand, but I was there to listen. It's like we grew apart.
I thought that when I got home, I would pick up right where we left off, and it was as if I was off on vacation for a year and I came back. That was not the case. People go through a lot of changes during a deployment, a lot of changes. I think we've learned more about each other in the past 3 years since I got home than we did in the 21 years that we were married before I left.
It was good having the reintegration thing just for me and the girls before he was home. They kind of gave us brochures and stuff, you know, what to look out for or what to watch, you know. To me, the deployment is easier than the coming home. Because deployment, okay, he was gone, I dealt with whatever. Now, every day is different since he's been home for 3 years, almost 3 years. It's harder. It's actually harder.
People who have not been there do not understand, and I don't expect them to understand. I don't think I'll ever put this behind me. It's something that'll always have with me. It's like you're starting all over again. It's like you're starting all over again. And, you know, that's bittersweet.
There are 3 phases in the Minnesota deployment cycle support model. They are pre-deployment, deployment support, and post-deployment reintegration. Each stage of this cycle has its own unique challenges service members and their families must face. The Beyond the Yellow Ribbon program is there to assist service members and their families to face these challenges head-on, offering training, information, and support.
Nobody gets married to send their loved one to war. In my mind, the president's given all the medals to the wrong people. Here's the heroes right here. Beyond the Yellow Ribbon comprises, I like to say, three legs of a stool. One, training soldiers, literally training soldiers how to successfully readapt into the civilian world. The second leg is training families, what to expect in returning combat veterans and how to put families back together again. And the third leg, and maybe the leg I'm most proud of, is training communities, every segment of communities, how to help their citizen soldier and their families, military families, sustain themselves during combat and then reunite, reintegrate, and re-enter society post-combat. This is not a program, it's a process, and it's not the military's process alone. It takes all the resources of the local, county, state, and federal government, along with every nonprofit organization that's willing to help. It's not something that can be bottled in a program. It's people of goodwill throughout our communities offering to support our military families and our returning veterans with the services they have to offer. You know, people often ask me, why are you passionate? Why are you committed to this mission? It's hard not to be emotional. I've seen great young Americans die in combat. I've seen the toll that war takes firsthand personally, and I've been in the counseling room to listen to the pain of family members as they've tried to understand their returning combat veteran and put their lives back together again. And I know personally this challenge is bigger than most of us can handle by ourselves. We long to come home, be a productive part of our communities. We need our communities to support us, and I'm convinced of the goodwill of our communities, and I'm convinced communities want to help us. They just need to know how. I believe the program is a success in several ways. It established the fact that there's a need nationwide for a very formal training program to help soldiers and families. And it raised awareness that this need is beyond the military. It's a community need with a community-based solution. It's also a success because it legitimized and normalized the fact that it is a challenge to come home.
The final phase helps soldiers and families merge back into civilian life by providing reintegration training, access to government and non-governmental resources, and timely referrals to services. Some of the challenges they may face include relationships, employment, anger, substance abuse, parenting, and education. Upon their return, service members are provided with a half-day of training at their demobilization site. They are enrolled into their local Veterans Administration Center, learn about key benefits, and can access critical resources. Further training is mandatory for returning service members in the form of 30-day, 60-day, and 90-day reintegration training. Service members and their families attend some of these training sessions together. This further helps them cope with the challenges of reintegration and connects them to resources if needed. Beyond the Yellow Ribbon has helped thousands of men and women reconnect with their families and their communities. But there are still more challenges ahead.
How do we get there? We get there by building the team, by what we call in Minnesota building Fort Minnesota. And building Fort Minnesota is a concept where we harness the goodwill and we harness the partnerships of communities and agencies within those communities to reach out and touch soldiers and families.
Beyond the Yellow Ribbon itself is a term, but we need to make sure it's more than just a term. It needs to be a meaningful, deliverable set of services that reflects the best commitment that we can make as a state and as a nation to the men and women who risk their lives and take on great burdens for the cause of freedom and liberty and security for this country. We can never repay the full amount that we should, but we need to do all that we can, and this is one step in that direction. It's a fantastic program, and I hope people will continue to support it enthusiastically, and I believe they will.
Well, it's a national model. It's still in its infancy because we're working with a lot of state and private sector organizations to institutionalize this well beyond the Guard.
How committed is the Minnesota Guard? This is what I exist for. This has become my passion. This has become the passion of the members of our team. And one thing that we try to guard against is this is not just another military mission. This is not just another requirement. These are not just another event that we have to plan. Every time we get families and soldiers together for this purpose, it's bigger than that. It's more meaningful than that. It's more emotional than that. And so this is truly a mission of the heart.
Be honest with you, I hope this program goes to where it is not a military program, it's a state and community responsibility, where every community in Minnesota becomes a Beyond the Yellow Ribbon community, where it is aware of its military families, knows who's deploying, who's deployed, and who's returning, and has attuned every service in their community, every place of worship, every business, every social service provider, every civic organization, to cherish their military families and to support their returning veterans.